Hello again, I am Blunty. In my Ryzen 9 3900X review and breakdown video, I did some tests where I was putting it through its content creator paces because high performance, high thread count CPUs are most useful when doing that kind of aggressive multitasking workload, and it kicked bum in a very impressive way. What was also going on in that video though was the game itself. In this test, Dauntless was also being powered by the simultaneously released brand new AMD RX 5700, the first of AMD's so-called RDNA or RDNA architecture. And of their new RDNA architecture, they say this: engineered from the ground up at superior performance and power efficiency, RDNA is the architecture powering AMD's 7nm gaming GPU, delivering 1.25 performance per clock compared to previous 14nm processors. Equipped with GDDR6 memory and featuring PCIe Express 4.0 support, RDNA architecture is ready for the new generation of games. Basically, it's a new forward-looking architecture that AMD have been plugging away on for quite some time now, and now it's ready for prime time. New compute units, new faster memory, new faster data bandwidth, new faster everything, basically, and designed to be very, very scalable. And all that's nifty to dig down into from a nerdy point of view, and I'm sure people with nothing better to do will spend quite a lot of time dissecting and arguing on Reddit and other forums for quite some time to come. But most people wondering if they should hand over money so they can put one of these in their very own PC just don't care about that, or shouldn't. At the end of the day, at the start of the day, and if you're lucky enough not to have a traditional day job, hooray, at the middle of the day, these are for making games look good and run smooth. And that's the only story I care about. And again, like my Ryzen 9 review, I'm not bothering with the ever more common amongst my peers boring bar chart orgies that are only ever really used as fuel for idiot fanboy arguments on Reddit by people who don't realize they could be playing games instead of being worthless wannabe keyboard warriors arguing about things on the internet. I'd rather just be useful and show you some real world gameplay, so that's what we're doing. Price-wise, it sits level with the RTX 2060, which itself, like the 5700, is targeted at the fastest growing market segment of gamers, those who have started the move to the now much more affordable and common 1440p screens. 1080 has started to wane as the targeted ideal for PC gamers, and 1440p steps in, with 4K still for those with deeper pockets and more aspirational goals. And I just so happen to have one of those 2060s handy for another build coming soon, one of Gigabyte's WindForce overclock models, so that's what I'll be using as the prime measuring stick here. Now, to begin with, a few canned benchmarks. Let's get those out of the way first. The 1080 Extreme Superposition test delivered 4,414 compared to the 2060s. It's a difference of just 159 points, or 3.6%, in the RTX's favor. Time Spy came in with 79.76, while the 2060 pulled in an 80.45, a difference of less than 1%. So we'll call that one a draw for all intents and purposes. And with the launch of the 5700 alongside the new Ryzen 3rd Gen CPUs and their matched X570 motherboards and such, we have the combination that delivered the world's first PCIe 4.0 solution, which allows for up to a doubling of bandwidth to the PCI slots and such. And with that, 3D Mark released a test specifically designed to benchmark these new PCIe bandwidths. And with the 5700, I got 21.58 gigabytes a second. That's a lot of jiggly bytes. Being that this is the first time this test has been used, and with only one GPU out there with the PCIe 4.0 capability, aside from the slightly bigger sibling, the 5700 XT model, it's hard to say at this stage what this number really means in the really real world. But on paper, it could make a significant difference for certain types of games, like, for example, open world games that rely quite heavily on continually pushing textures and geometry in and out of the GPU's memory. But compared to the PCIe 3.0 restricted result from the 2060, the test frame rate was basically halved, and again, on paper, that could be evidence of the big differences coming. But now for actual, really real gaming. I selected just a few varied examples for representative results to get a feel for how this card performs. In all cases, I was targeting 1440p 60 FPS and with settings maxed out. With the exception of motion blur when present as an option, I would always turn that off because I hate it, makes me feel sick, and you know what, I don't have a high-end, super fast, crispy as F, super high refresh rate monitor for nothing, just for some idiot game designer to come along and make my game deliberately blurry and smeared. No, thank you very much, go to hell with your motion blur, please. Burn for your blurry sins. Why is that always on by default? Stop it. Anyway, Dauntless was perfectly happy at 1440p with a very consistent frame rate hovering just either side of the sweet 60 FPS, utilising the full power of the GPU and capping out at a very safe temperature for just under 70 degrees, and this bodes well. The RTX 2060 was, for all purposes, identical, easily hovering around that exact same 60 FPS mark pretty stably. Doom 2016 yet, and hands up in the comments who's friggin' excited about the sequel coming soon. Me. This ran at max settings, 1440p, at anywhere from the low 80s to the low triple digits. Basically ideal for this game. My personal preference is to bury it a bit more in the triple digits more often, for this game to feel as gloriously liquid smooth as possible on my 165Hz monitor, but above 80 FPS is still a super comfortable place to be for this game. However, the RTX 2060 sat more reliably in the triple digit range more often, dipping below it very, very rarely only. GTA 5 was easy mode 120 to 150 FPS also at 1440p maxed out again, and without scraping the ceiling of the GPU from utilization, power or heat perspective. Meanwhile, the RTX 2060 took a much bigger hit here, by the way. I never saw triple-digit frame rates in this test at these settings. That said, it was buried deep in the 70s and beyond, more than perfectly playable for this title, so who cares really? And Monster Hunter World, a much bigger pig of a game to run. It held on to 45 to 60 FPS depending on where I was, and this is the first of the games I would consider pulling back slightly in settings to get that 60, because this game really does just feel nicer when you can lock into that 60 FPS. However, the RTX 2060 saw 60s to high 70s for most of its time in this game, making it a clear victory here. And finally, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, averaging 72 FPS and with the minimum never sinking below 60 frames per second with, as you can see from one of the niceties I like about this benchmark, where it tells you whether you're a CPU or GPU bound, the monster Ryzen 9 3900X was keeping well out of the way, so we can know that the GPU really does deliver this purity. And on the RTX 2060 side of the fence, well, the tables turned again here, with the 5700 taking a noticeable advantage across the board, but still leaving the 2060's gameplay experience solidly playable, only rarely dipping below the 60 FPS mark. But leaving us in no doubt that the 5700 was the superior GPU for this game in this test. Now, AMD market this thing towards gamers wanting to step up to 1440p without having to sacrifice settings or frame rate, and from what I've seen so far, it is ideal for that. I feel good about recommending this GPU to people hoping to target 1440p high and ultra settings and 60 FPS. It would seem it can do that pretty reliably across the board. When you're choosing between this or one of Team Green's matches, well, it's not always about which number is higher necessarily. Overall, it's a bit of a toss-up it seems. So far it seems the RTX has the edge more often than not, but not by much of a margin at all. And the games where the AMD card beat it, it did so by wider margins. It's also worth keeping in mind that I was comparing a mature RTX 2060 driver against pre-release drivers from AMD's side, so some of the gaps where it lagged behind may indeed close as the driver matures. But as it stands, either is a safe bet for good gaming at 1440p. On paper, Team Green does seem to have a slight edge, but is it an edge that makes a noticeable difference in normal gameplay? I don't think so. No, not really, at all. So it's a close call. For some people, it may just be down to a simple choice of fandom. Which company do you like most? Whose software and UI do you like better? For others, perhaps there's a specific title or series where one or the other does noticeably better, and that will inform your decision about which way you go. But at the end of the day, AMD have absolutely delivered a very good first step in this new architecture, and safely deliver on their promise of a very satisfying 1440p gameplay capable card. Down the line, I may take a closer look at the bullet point features like the supposedly smart sharpening fancy stuff for upscaling and whatnot, but frankly, I don't care that much about that. Sure, it's clever and stuff, but I'd rather just run a game at a proper native resolution without tech trickery and fakery. I'm a simple man with simple needs at the end of the day, I suppose. Thanks for watching. I hope this has been useful and or informative. I am Blunty, and I will catch you next time.